Today's topic will be connecting to cloud storage from a Linux desktop. The type of storage we're going to connect to would be an S3 compatible cloud storage, which was a simple cloud storage originally started by Amazon. I'll leave a link in the notes below. You can go and read about what Amazon S3 is. Now, the S3 standard is used by several cloud providers. So this whole list of cloud providers allows you to connect to their cloud storage using the same basic set of commands. And once you've kind of gotten those commands down, you can connect to any provider that supports S3 from a Linux desktop. You're going to need a few pieces of information. You're going to have to create a user account on your cloud provider that has access to S3 storage. They're going to give you a secret key, and they're going to give you an access key. You're also going to need to know the URL for whatever cloud provider you're using. I'm going to be using Wasabi in this example, and to find their URLs, I went to Google, search for Wasabi S3 URLs. The first one on the link refers me back to their site. And I know that I have my cloud storage in their US West region out in Oregon. So this is the URL that I will need. And what I've done is I've copied the access key that they gave me, the secret key, and I'm going to add the URL for this region. And the URL must match the region that your S3 storage is in. Paste that in. So on Wasabi, which is my cloud provider, I've created a bucket called VM Cloud Storage. Bucket is basically where you're going to store all the objects. Objects are files, basically. Within that bucket, I have created two folders. One's Fedora Workstation, the other's just Batwings, just for example. The user that I'm going to create is only going to have access to this Fedora Workstation folder within this bucket. So the user has been created here. Most providers will list the key for you, but they won't list the secret key. So when you initially create the user, they give you the option to save the access key and the secret key. So you want to save that and store it in a safe place. So you can see the key is here, but not the secret key. The only way I could get that secret key, if I didn't have it or I lost it, I'd have to recreate a new set of keys for it. And when you look at this user, you go down to the policies, you see there's a policy called Fedora Workstation that's assigned to this user. And if we go take a look at that policy, all we did was we gave the user the ability to list what's in the VM Cloud Storage bucket. But we only gave them rights, the gets, the lists, the puts, deletes, only to the Fedora Workstation folder. So once they connect, they will only have access to that folder. And these are full rights that I'm giving to this user. Now the command that is normally used is S3 command. And it's a command line tool that you normally download and you run all your scripts and you copy, delete, and sync files all from the command line. You can write scripts that will do it automatically as long as you configured it correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a Alma Linux. Let me see what version I have. This is an Alma Linux 8.3. So I would believe the package is called S3CMD. So I would DNF install. Okay, so it's already installed, so I don't have anything to do there. The command to configure it is S3CMD-configure. And when you run that command, you're going to need those options, the access key, the secret key, and the URL. So we run S3 command-configure. And it's going to go through and ask you a series of questions. The first thing it wants is the access key. Now, the access key is the first one there that they gave you. And it wants the secret key. There's a comma separating them. And I'm in the US region. Now this is the URL that it's looking for. It's defaulting to the Amazon URL. But if you're using some other S3 provider, you have to put in the correct URL there. So I'm going to copy that. And for this DNS style bucket option, you want to copy all this information except for the .s3. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in the URL that I had before. Yep, can't go back with the arrow key, so I'm going to have to paste in the other part first. So you have to paste in this starting at the % over to the dot. Then you paste in the URL. And you have to type some type of encryption password. When it's actually transferring files from the Linux machine up to your S3 provider, it's going to encrypt those files. And then it decrypts them on the other side. So that decryption password can be anything you want. Just make sure that you make note of it and save it somewhere. Let's just say hello. It'll usually find GPG in your path, so just go ahead and accept it. You want to say yes. You want to use HTTPS. You don't want a proxy server, unless you have one, of course. And then it gives you the option to test with the credentials. Most times this will fail because you have to go in and modify some stuff, but I try it anyway. All right, now this says the test failed. But remember, I only gave this user access to the Fedora Workstation folder. And they're trying to do a list all my buckets, which they don't have rights to do. So I want to go ahead and tell it to say retry. I want to say no. then it's going to ask me to save the settings. You want to save the settings. Okay, and it tells you that it'll save the file. It'll save the settings in a file called .s3config in your home directory. And what I normally do is I take a copy of that. What are we doing here? I just make a backup copy of it. And that's basically what you do just to get it installed. And then to actually test the connection, there's a whole man page for the S3 command. You have options to create buckets, remove buckets, list files, put files, get, and all of that. I'm going to leave a link here for the Amazon tools. And there's a link here that tells you basically how to set up the S3 sync command, which is basically like an rsync. So you can rsync from your Linux desktop to your cloud storage. To test the actual connection, the command is S3 command, and then whatever command you want to run, ls is the command, and the format is always S3, and then the name of the, S3:// and then the name of the bucket. So we created a bucket called cloud storage, and we can see that we have the Fedora Workstation folder and the Batwings folder. And if we want to see what's in that Fedora Workstation folder, oops, sorry, you have to do a slash at the end so that it knows the folder. So these are just the files that are in that folder. So you notice if I just do that, it just does an ls of the folder itself. But if I want to see what's in the folder, I have to put the trailing slash in there. So for example, let's see what I have here. Okay, I got some sample files that I put into the files folder. If I wanted to sync that up to my cloud storage, I get S3 cmd sync, and I have to put the path, which is, and I want that whole folder. Hello, UD. So I'm running the S3 command. I'm using the sync option. I want to sync the files folder in my home directory to the, I got to put Fedora Workstation in there because that's what I have access to. Okay, the cloud storage, then the folder, then the subfolder with the trailing slash. And that'll go through and it'll sync. So if I do my ls command again for that Fedora Workstation folder, you see here that I have a directory called files now that I didn't have before. And if I go and look in that files folder, those are the same files that I have here. Now, if I run that sync command again, the files haven't changed, so nothing happens. But if I'm on my, What have I got in files? I go. But if I make a modification to the file locally and then I sync it again, it will sync just the file that changed. So if you've got documents or spreadsheets, something like that, if it changes on a daily basis, you would sync it every night, and it'll only sync the files that have changed. So you have a copy up in your cloud storage. Now, running this from the command line is good, and you can write scripts, all types of bash scripts that'll copy and remove and sync your files. But there is also an option to use a GUI. The option for the GUI is called S3FS Fuse. I'll leave a link below for that. S3FS Fuse will allow you to mount your cloud storage, and then it'll be available to you in your Windows system. So I have another system here. I'll make that full screen. I've got a Fedora system here. Okay, Fedora system here, and let's make sure it's mounted already. It's not mounted yet. Okay. Okay, on my Fedora system, I have to install the package called S3FS Fuse. And this package is available on all these different distributions. And they give examples on how to install S3FS Fuse. So I've got it installed, and it talks about creating a credentials file. The default is this .password-3fs file system. I'm sorry, file that's created in your home directory. It also talks about a system-wide etc password-s3fs. And all you have to do is you have to copy the access key ID followed by a colon and then the secret key to your home directory in a file called pass3fs. And they recommend that you change the permissions to 600 so that it's only readable by the user. Let's see what I did here. Let me make this larger. I actually created a file called S3config-Fedora Workstation. Oh, that's the S3 config. I'm looking for the password file. Oh, there's the password file. Sorry. All right, in that password file is, again, the access key, a colon, and then the secret key, which is what they tell you to do here. Now they give you commands to mount the bucket. And since it's a Fuse file system, a regular user can mount a local file system, which means they can mount their S3 storage on a local folder that they have access to. You don't have to be root to use the Fuse file system. So it gives you commands to run here. If you get any problems, any errors, they tell you to run this command. But when you run this command, it runs and it gives you all the output on the screen, but it doesn't exit. It just stays on the screen so you can see what the output is. If you find the error and you want to go back and try to fix something, you have to press Control-C to get out of this debug option. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run S3FS. I'm going to put in my bucket name. I'm going to put the path to the mount point. I'm going to put the -O option to tell it where the password file is. And that's going to be here. And I've already done this, so let me bring the command back up. Okay, in my home directory, I created a folder called S3 Mount. I'm going to run this S3FS command. Want all of that. Okay. Now back in the documentation, I may have left this out. It tells you if you're not using Amazon, you have to specify the URL. So that's another -O option with the path to that URL. They give an example here of how to mount it in S3FS tab, but I'm not mounting in FS tab. I'm just doing a local mount so that the user has access to it. So we have to add the option for the path to the URL too. So back over here. All right, we've got the S3FS command. We got the name of our bucket, which is VM Cloud Storage. The place where we're going to mount it is in my home directory in a folder called S3 Mount. I'm telling it where the password file is, which is the .password S3FS Fedora Workstation. And then I have to pass it another option, which is the URL, which is the URL that Wasabi provided for the West region. So once I run that command, it goes and it mounts. If I do a mount here, I can see there's an S3FS type mount. See the path that it's mounted, and it's a Fuse file system. And it gives it my user ID and my group ID. So any files that I create on that mount point will have UID 1000 ownership and GID 1000 ownership. So I look in my S3 Mount folder, and you notice a little pause there. That's because S3 is not that fast. There's going to be a little pause because it's connecting out over the internet and doing a mount. So if I go into that Fedora Workstation, I can see all the files that are there. So now you've got your cloud storage that supports S3 mounted on your Linux box. And since you've got a file explorer, There's your S3 mount right there. You see the bat wings has a little X because you don't have rights to it. Well, this user doesn't have rights to it because I didn't give them rights to it. I only gave them rights to this folder, Fedora Workstation. So I could take let's open a new window here. Now this is just a test box, so I don't have any files on it. Let me see if I can go grab some. Oh, I think I got something in download. Let's go home. I got an old laptop that I have some backup files for. I got some app image here. Let's say I want to take those files, and I can just drop them straight onto that S3 mount. Now, actually what it's doing is it's bringing them down to the Linux box, and then it's sending them up to the cloud storage. Now, there are other options here where you can mount this in you could mount this in S3FS tab. And that will mount it every time the system boots up. But I'm not looking at that option. I'm just looking at the option of letting the user have access to their remote storage. Now, there was something that I read here. Let me see if I can find it again. If you're going to be mounting a remote file system, I'm going to make this bigger so you can see. Let's see. And Etsy, there's a file called UpdateDB.conf. You want to go into that file and you want to add the Fuse S3FS file system. Okay, see this fuse.s3fs? This UpdateDB is a program that will go through each night, normally on most systems, and it basically keeps a list of every file on your system. You don't want to have the UpdateDB go through and try to index your cloud storage, because that could take a long time. So you have to go into the UpdateDB.conf file and tell it not to try to go in and index any file system that's mounted with S3FS. And you just have to add it to the list here and then save it. You don't have to restart anything. And that's basically all you have to do to get access to your S3 storage. So connecting to your S3 cloud storage is very simple. You can do it command line, or you can do it with the Fuse plugin, which will give you a GUI interface. Just a reminder, I've deleted the accounts used in this video. I've deleted the bucket used in this video. Thanks for watching. Send me an email. Talk to you guys later. I'm gonna do an install. If I try to look inside of that bat wings, of course it works. It doesn't do what I want it to do. And your system supports the locate feature, like locate S3 CMD. Locate is basically a feature that has an index basically of all the files on your system, and that update normally runs every night, where it just re-indexes and creates like a little database showing you and I will cut here and I will go to the closing. Here's the closing.